a short halftime there. Obviously, we got to keep going. All right, this is not the Super Bowl halftime show here. Okay, we're going to get right back at it. And right back to Cancun for the Steelers here. I can't say I'm surprised. I'm not. Obviously, those of y'all who are locked into the show. So we might as well begin here. Should the Steelers and Mike Tomlin part ways after the latest one-and-done playoff exit? And Zach, I'm going to begin here. Where do I begin? Look, I'm going to just try to be as calm as possible with this take. I'm not really planning on going on the rant here. Obviously, I did that too many times talking about this particular topic. I'm not really trying to do that right now. Look, the proof is in the pudding. Okay, the Steelers right now should trade Mike Tomlin and enter a full reset. Okay, now I am tired of the sleep, making excuses, blaming it on the personnel, blaming it on the lack of having a franchise quarterback. I am tired of that. Even with a franchise quarterback and money invested on the offensive side of the ball, like back in the Big Ben days, they still underachieve. They still could have won more Super Bowls than they did. They still had terrible playoff losses to Tim Tebow. Whoa, okay, to Blake Bortles. I like turtles, okay? They still had terrible, losses, even with franchise quarterback, even with money invested offensively. No, stop it. Okay, what we are seeing right now with the Steelers over the last couple of years in the playoffs is Mike Tomlin getting out coached by Andy Reid, by Sean McDermott, by John Harbaugh, and we have to call a spade. Okay, Baltimore destroyed the Steelers on the ground for almost 300 rushing yards. And look, I know it's easier said than done. I know it's not no easy task stopping that RPO game with Lamar and Derrick. I get it. Okay, and I understand in week 16, Pittsburgh, they sold out to keep the ball out of Jackson's hands on option plays, and Henry ended up finishing with 162 yards on 24 carries, and then they tried to do the opposite, sending out edge rushers to stop Henry this time, and Lamar was able to make them pay, and Henry was able to make them pay as well, obviously, adding Micah Fitzpatrick to his stiff arm highlight reel. Okay, I am the real Leel. Now, the Ravens are a special team, and look, I do think that we will give Ravens credit here, obviously, but let that not dilute the fact that Mike Tomlin has been making questionable decision-making throughout the whole entire season. Okay, in week 18, dare I remind you, all right, against the Bengals, Mike Tomlin had a second-year cornerback making his first career start on Jamar Chase one-on-one. And that turned out terribly. Jamar Chase had an easy touchdown. Okay, these are the things I'm talking about. So when people try to debate me because I started this narrative, me and Terry Bradshaw of Mike Tomlin being an overrated coach, people like to come at me and act like I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm giving you live examples. I'm giving you coaching decisions. Okay, I'm not just saying he's overrated because he lost in the playoffs. I'm giving you scenarios. Okay, and this is not a Tribe Called Quest here. Okay, I'm literally showing you what he's doing wrong and telling you what he's doing wrong, but yet y'all choose to ignore it. We need to stop the bull crap. Hold this man accountable like everybody else. Okay, even the Cowboys, who we're going to talk about later on the show, they parted ways with Mike McCarthy. Okay, they did. Right? And Mike McCarthy, you compare his resume to Mike Tomlin, it's really not that different. As far as wins, having a Super Bowl, okay, underachieving, okay, and yet Mike Tomlin was the one that got an extension after getting dominated by the Bills. And Mike McCarthy had to find his way, right? So I don't want to hear that I'm being picky, I'm being unfair to Mike Tomlin. No, he has a situation where he has an owner that clearly doesn't care about winning a championship because he would have been gone by now. that clearly values stability over adaptability, which is why he's still there. And it was a terrible game. People would say they fought back in the game. They didn't fight back in the game. These guys looked defeated out there. Okay, they had a couple moon balls that bailed them out of another blowout. They made it look a little bit more respectable. But remember, Baltimore was driving to add more points, and they took the foot off the gas because they already beat their ass. They're like, you know what? I'm going to take my foot off the gas. I could have made it look worse. Okay? That was not fight. That was, I'm going to let you live. I'm going to take my foot off your neck. I'm going to let you survive and go out, on your shield. Okay? And this is where we are. So, yes, I do think if you want to come to me and say quarterback, well, guess what? You're not going to get that guy because you're winning in the regular season. You're going to be out of position. You enter the full reset. You draft your quarterback. You hire your new coach, and you hire your coordinators, and you try to get this team out of football purgatory.
So I agree. I do think they should move on. The issue is, though, I thought last year was the time to move on. And you mentioned it. They gave him an extension. So if they were going to give him an extension last year, I don't think they're all of a sudden going to fire him this year. And I do think where the Steelers are stuck is I think they're at a point where the only way they are going to fire Tomlin is if the bottom falls out and they win like 5 games, which would give them time throughout the season to really scout and figure out who that next guy would be. But that's not happening. This team made the playoffs, which is honestly still shocking to me considering their quarterback situation. And it is even wild looking back that they started 10-3. We know how the season ended, but just it's all too familiar. Another December collapse for the Steelers. And I just think this team needs a major change in mindset because it feels like to me, ever since Ben Roethlisberger retired, Mike Tomlin's formula for winning games is, okay, we're going to rely on our defense. We're paying all of these guys so much money, and we're going to have them wreck the game while the offense is just going to be conservative, not really make that many mistakes, and all they have to do is just not make mistakes and not lose us the game. The problem is, I think over the last few years, there have just been many guys on this defense that have gotten old. They're not the same players that they once were, and I don't care what year it is or who their coach is or what talent they have. If the Pittsburgh Steelers are allowing a drive of 13 consecutive runs right down their throat for a touchdown, if the Pittsburgh Steelers in a playoff game are allowing their arch rival to run for 300 yards, they're going to be embarrassed. And that's an issue. And I think there needs to be an overall change in mindset. There needs to be a change in philosophy, but we know it's not going to happen. I would be shocked if Mike Tomlin isn't the coach of this team to start next year. And that just raises a lot more questions. What are they going to do with the quarterback position? I assume Arthur Smith is going to be back as the offensive coordinator, but do you feel really good about that? Not really. What's going to happen with George Pickens, a guy that I'm just getting sick of, to be honest with you? I know he's super talented, but he's just immature. I don't think winning is his number one priority. And I know the Steelers and Tomlin are known for bringing guys of his prototype in that, they nurture them and they think that Pittsburgh is the best place for them, but not really. It's not looking that way anymore. So I think as long as Tomlin is their coach, they're kind of stuck, which is a huge issue. I don't even know what they do at quarterback. Like, I wouldn't bring Russell Wilson back. Do you pivot back to Justin Fields? Maybe. But then it's like, why did you even bench Justin Fields in the first place when he had a winning record, when you were playing pretty good with him? So I just think this team has a lot of issues right now. I think they were exposed by Baltimore last night. That game was over 5 minutes in, which is a bad look. And I just still can't even believe this team made the playoffs because it's shocking that they started 10-3. I still don't know how they did it.
A lot of things in this world is very unexplainable. I don't know how they won 10 games either. I don't know how they was 10-3. Look, I can't explain that, obviously, but what I can explain is that we all knew that Russell Wilson was entering the wild card weekend as the worst quarterback, in the National Football League, entering the playoffs. And that's not going to change going forward. He's a bottom tier quarterback. And I think they made a mistake. And look, I know that was the one thing that I gave Mike Tomlin credit for when it was working. When they pivoted to Wilson, and then they had the stretch where they was like 3 or 4-0 with Wilson as their quarterback, and their offense, as far as the passing game is concerned, looked a little bit more, successful. But a lot of that was just, Russell Wilson having one type of throw that he can make continuously, and that's that moonshot play. I mean, literally, he is as one-dimensional, especially as he gotten older, where he lacks mobility in the same way that he had in his prime. He's really one-dimensional when that one-dimensional offense was working. So obviously you was winning games, and a lot of it was listen, he throw an accurate ball. Don't get me wrong. On the deep shot up the sideline, I don't think there's no quarterback more accurate than Wilson. But the reality is, when Mike Tomlin made that change, when Justin Fields was 4-2, okay, I felt like they lost a sense of their vision that they had. At least with Justin Fields, you knew you was going to win with your defense. You knew you was going to run the football. You was going to win defensively. And their defense during that time was making plays. It was when they pivoted to Russell Wilson and he started messing up and throwing interceptions and turning the ball over, is when the defense was a no-show. Okay? Because when they were winning games with Fields, their defense was winning them games. Fields did not have a spectacular game, but he wasn't turning the ball over like that. He was, doing what he had to do, managing the game, and they had a vision. That's how they won. I hated it because, I think you should evolve, but it was working. You stick with it. He pivoted to Wilson. They got hot in those games because of the moonshot play. And then when it became evident that Wilson is one-dimensional, he's still a turnover machine, the defense lost his confidence, and their impact on the game was minimal by the week and clearly non-existent by the playoffs. So here we are.
So we're both on the same page. We would move on from Tomlin. Do you think there's any shot they do that? And if they keep him, what would your plan be at quarterback?
I mean, look, Tomlin is the Doc Rivers of the NFL. Okay, as we can see in this clip. And I said this before. A couple years ago, obviously, was trending on X after the game. And that's something I said years ago, and people criticized me for it. Okay, yeah, cool. Lil Shadamas is on the mic. And he's always going to have a job. And unfortunately, it looks like he's always going to have a job in Pittsburgh until he says, he retires or whatnot. And that's unfortunate because this team is always going to be in football purgatory with Mike Tomlin. We see Andy Reid. We've seen Andy Reid have to leave even despite making 4 straight NFC championship games with mediocre quarterbacks. He had to leave. He got fired eventually. He got parted ways with. He had to go and figure it out, and he did. And that worked out great for him. Okay. The same thing could be said with who am I missing here? Andy Reid.
Bill Belichick.
And Bill Belichick, of course, the greatest coach of all time. Right. And if people are on the Mike Tomlin train as far as the Steelers is in that roster, incompetent roster, and that roster is holding him back, then even they should want Mike Tomlin to leave and do his best for Mike Tomlin. So there's a lot of ways and examples depending on where you are, and it doesn't even depend on where you are, why you should want this split to be invitable. Whether you like me and think that Mike Tomlin is a little bit overrated, or whether or not you are a Mike Tomlin believer and you think he deserves better, a split should be invitable, but it's not going to happen. Now, unfortunately, quarterback-wise, this is where things get messed up because if you stuck with Fields when you were 4-2, you would have a better synopsis on if he was your quarterback of the future. Okay? Because he was 4-2, you ride with him, you see if he gets you to the playoffs, and you see what he has and where he can improve on, and you are able to make a better decision with him. But now that you took him out of the game and you rocked out with Russell Wilson, okay, I think it's evident that Wilson, he's not the same quarterback. That's never coming back. You're not going to win anything with him. I think they should move on from him. But who do they replace him with is going to be the $1 million question, because they're not going to embrace the rebuild. So it's going to have to be either a quarterback they sign in free agency, or it's going to have to be Fields, and we don't have that accurate depiction of Fields. And we know what Russell Wilson brings and don't bring to the table, and they're going to be forever in football purgatory.
Yeah, I think the point on Fields is a good one. If you ride him out, even if you miss the playoffs, you would at least know if you have a future with him as your starter. And now you have no idea. And I do think Fields is going to be a starter in the league next year, whether it's in Pittsburgh or whether it's somewhere else. Another idea I've heard thrown out there, I'm curious for your thoughts on this, is Aaron Rodgers going to Pittsburgh. But the thing that makes me curious about that is Mike Tomlin. We know he's the head honcho of the team. He's the one that makes all the important decisions. Would he be willing to bring in a guy like that, who we know Aaron Rodgers and what his rep is? He is going to want a lot of control. And Mike Tomlin has kind of already been down that path in the later years of Ben Roethlisberger. And I think deep down, he hated that, having a superstar guy that had so much equity within the franchise where not all of the important decisions went through him. But I think you could also make the case that Aaron Rodgers, like if this team does have any hope of winning anything next year, maybe he's the guy you want to bring in. So I just don't think there's some great answer here, which is just further proof of why I think this team is in a bad spot right now.
Yeah, because even if you go the Aaron Rodgers route, I mean, look what he did with the Jets this year. That's not something that you're amped up about. And even if you do bring him, I don't think it would be an issue as far as culturally, as far as the power dynamics, because Russell Wilson was in that same boat in Denver. He was like Aaron Rodgers, wanted, he had his own private office. He was making the decisions and who he wanted to play with and all that. And he got humbled because he respected Mike Tomlin's resume. So I think that would be an easy thing for Rodgers, when you're playing for, still an all-time great coach. You would take a back seat there. They already have their way of how they go about things. So if he goes there, that's because he bought into the vision. So that wouldn't be an issue. But what would be the issue is looking at what he did, Rodgers, in New York this year, convincing yourself that that's the guy that we should be rocking out with.
I mean, I think you could make the case he's the best solution. He did throw for 28 touchdowns, had 11 interceptions. And I do think those numbers are more legitimate than the Fugazi numbers Russell Wilson put up in Denver last year. But I think the overall point is, like, even if you do bring in Rodgers, he's 41 years old. Like, he's not going to be the long-term answer. And to be honest, as long as Mike Tomlin is your coach, I have trouble thinking that they're going to be able to find that guy. Like, well, I got to say, and I'm not saying this is going to happen, but I think if you make Mike Tomlin the coach of the Cowboys with the established quarterback, with a talented roster, I think they could win big there. I really do. But the issue is, since Mike Tomlin has lost prime Ben Roethlisberger, he hasn't been able to find the answer at quarterback, which ultimately has been this team's downfall.
Yeah, and let's not forget that Big Ben won a championship before he landed with Mike Tomlin. So he already had the experience. He didn't have to develop. Big Ben, he was already developed. He was already a champion with Bill Cowher's team. So when you have a franchise quarterback that already won, and you are a coach who, you bring something to the table, obviously a motivational speaker, and that's what you do well. And you get the team to buy into your vision, and that's what happens. And that's how you're able to, win a championship of your own. But the reality is, Big Ben is not coming through that door. Prime Big Ben is not coming through that door. And I don't know where they go from here, but I would suggest that they tear it up and trade Mike Tomlin and get a first round pick. I mean, you look at Sean Payton in Denver. He went for a first rounder. He went for a second rounder. He went for a third. Mike Tomlin is the most popular coach in the National Football League, and I'm pretty sure you can get a similar package, if not better, and you can build out that roster that really needs to be rebuilt.
My last thought, I just wanted to harp on this again. I'm just so disappointed in this defense. You mentioned it. They're the highest paid defense in the league. You have TJ Watt. You have Minkah Fitzpatrick. You paid Patrick Queen big money. Cam Hayward has been the one guy that's consistently showed up week in and week out. And in each of these games recently against big opponents, against the Chiefs, against the Bengals, against the Ravens, you let your opponent march right down the field and score. I think Terrell Austin is a guy that needs to go. I don't think he's done a good job at all as the defensive coordinator. And again, this is a team that's trying to win with defense and have their offense just play complementary football. And neither side has been able to do that.
Please like and subscribe for all the up-to-date content. You've been slinging shows left and right, slinging content left and right. Please don't miss anything. If you do, like, subscribe, leave a comment, leave a question, something you may want to answer, something you may have. All ideas are great ideas. Nothing's a dumb question.